Shift your arm, and feeling starts to return. A moment later, the skin seems filled with tiny electric points, even though nothing is touching or piercing it. The usual explanations blame poor circulation or a pinched nerve. Pressure can interfere with signal conduction and reduce flow through the microscopic vessels that feed the nerve. That helps explain why the hand becomes numb, but it does not explain the needles. After the pressure is released, what generates those new signals, and why does the brain place them in the skin? That single phrase, "my arm fell asleep," bundles together two different changes. Numbness is a loss. Ordinary touch signals arrive more weakly, or some fail to cross the compressed segment. Tingling is an addition. The nervous system receives activity that no fingertip or fabric produced. They can overlap, and they do not follow one fixed timetable in every arm, leg, or posture. Separating them matters, because an explanation for fading information still has to account for the vivid sensation that appears in its place. A peripheral nerve is a bundle of many axons, wrapped in supporting tissue and supplied by microscopic vessels. Pressure can deform the bundle, change electrical properties, and squeeze vessels that carry oxygen and nutrients. In controlled experiments on healthy volunteers, focal pressure slowed sensory signals and reduced their measured strength. In some subjects, part of the response failed to cross the compressed region. That is a partial conduction block, not a complete shutdown. Reduced local blood flow can also alter conduction. The balance between deformation and reduced perfusion depends on the site, strength, and duration of pressure. A sleeping position is not identical to a laboratory cuff, but these findings explain how numbness can develop. The needles were tested more directly in 1980. Researchers placed microelectrodes in sensory nerve fascicles of awake, healthy volunteers after a period of laboratory-induced ischemia. When circulation was restored, spontaneous bursts began in the previously affected fibers. They appeared after roughly half a minute, grew strongest around the second minute, then slowly faded. Their timing and intensity tracked what the volunteers felt. Local anesthetic blocks helped locate the source. The impulses were generated ectopically along the nerve, rather than mainly by receptors in the skin. This is unusually direct evidence for post-ischemic pins and needles. It does not prove that every everyday episode follows the same sequence, but it shows how a nerve can produce a convincing skin sensation when the skin has not been touched. Why would a healthy axon fire on its own? Ischemia and release change the electrical conditions across its membrane. One proposed physiological model focuses on potassium building up outside the axon and on the sodium-potassium pump that normally helps restore the balance. For a short period after release, those conditions may make sensory fibers more likely to fire bursts without a normal skin stimulus. Laboratory measurements of human nerves fit parts of this model. But no one has directly watched that entire molecular sequence inside an ordinary arm that went numb during sleep. It remains a model, and it does not mean returning blood physically strikes the nerve. An impulse that starts in the nerve can still feel as though it came from the hand. Each sensory axon normally carries information from a particular territory of skin. When that pathway becomes active farther upstream, the brain interprets the message through its usual address. Activity generated near the wrist or forearm can therefore be felt in fingers that were never touched. The recording explains where an unusual message can begin. The experience is still assembled by the nervous system. Once pressure is removed, mechanical distortion eases, blood flow through the nerve can recover, and local ionic conditions change again. Axons regain their usual excitability and ability to conduct impulses. Sensory and motor fibers do not all recover at the same speed, so there is no universal staircase of numbness, tingling, and movement. In a short reversible episode, abnormal bursts fade as ordinary signaling returns. Stronger or longer compression can behave differently and damage nerve structure in experimental models. Fast recovery is consistent with a temporary functional disturbance. It does not prove every form of pressure or numbness is harmless. That leaves a narrower conclusion. Numbness in pins and needles can feel like one episode, but they represent different changes, normal sensory messages becoming weaker, and extra activity appearing in sensory fibers. This account fits controlled compression and post-ischemic experiments, but it should stay within those limits. Persistent or unexplained symptoms are a different question, and this experience alone cannot identify their cause. If you have felt pins and needles in a hand, a foot, or somewhere else, describe what it felt like in the comments, without turning it into a diagnosis.